That's it. And now I'm officially the village idiot.
Of course, that's not the end of it. So Hans wants Henry to act as his cupid and deliver the love letter to Carolina.
I've got that necklace.
Excellent news! I'm not going to ask you how you did it. Here's a reward for you. Now you can carry on with your next task. I want you to sneak the jewellery into Carolina's trunk along with this letter.
Can't I just hand them to her?
You cannot! Under no circumstances must she find out who sent them. Otherwise the whole secret admirer ploy is fucked. Oh, and by the way, Henry, watch out for the butcher. He keeps a very close eye on his daughter, and if he catches you sniffing around, well, may all the saints preserve you. Once you've delivered the things, wait a day, and then come back and see me. Goodbye.
Henry can choose to pretend that he's the secret admirer, or reveal that it's Sir Hans. Either of those will doom Sir Hans's quest to enjoy the fruits of spring.
I bear you a letter and a gift from a secret admirer.
What? A gift? From me? Best keep your voice down. Papa will kill you if he finds out.
Yes, for you. A necklace and this letter.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Tell me, who is this secret admirer?
It's young Lord Capon.
What? Really? I can't imagine why he'd choose me. What would folks say?
Well, if I were you, I'd look on it as an honour.
Well, I've heard a thing or two about him. They say he's a seducer and a whoremonger. If I wear jewellery from him, word will soon get around and my family's honour will be in the mud. You can take that back. I'm no bathhouse wench who'll go with anyone who waves a piece of fancy jewellery under her nose. Even a nobleman. My virtue's more precious than gold. Farewell. Take care.
Actually, it's me.
You? I've never clapped eyes on you before.
But am I not good enough for you?
No. Yes. I mean, I just...
Well, do I at least get a kiss?
You can take that back. Tell me, who is this secret admirer?
If I told you, he wouldn't be secret, would he?
But...
I bid you farewell.
God...
The next phase involves obtaining some medieval pheromones for Sir Hans, to make him even more irresistible to the ladies.
I delivered the things as you asked.
I already know. My spies told me everything. She was wearing the necklace this morning as I asked in the letter.
So you'll go to the rendezvous with her?
Certainly not. I'm not going to pounce on her like a bull in rutting season. Her feelings must be allowed to mature gradually. Meanwhile, you'll get a potion for me.
I thought you didn't believe in witches' brews.
This is no witch's brew. It's an absolutely tried and tested elixir called Musk of Infinite Allure. There's a fellow in Sassau who sells it and he guarantees its success.
The easy way is just to bonk the charlatan for the recipe.
Do something! My gun! Over there! Over there!
You! Stop right where you are!
Look, I'll tell you the truth, but you mustn't tell anyone. The Lord of Rat-Eye sent me on a secret mission. And to do it, I have to bend the law a little now and again. Understand?
Who are you? Do you think I'm so stupid as to fall for such a fairy tale? Not a chance.
Hey, you! Halt! You'll get what for.
But the more genuine way is to scare the village into increasing the charlatan's sales. Unfortunately, it is morally questionable as the last time.
No luck at dice? Rabbit paws of all colors!
Well, well, who have we here?
Ah, the prodigal son returns. I knew you'd come back to me one day.
Let me guess, you saw it in a dream?
I knew you were going to say that.
But I had a divine revelation. That next time I won't be around to pull you out of the shit.
Oh, well, I am sorry. But these things are sent to try our fortitude in the face of adversity.
I'd like to try your fortitude. I've heard you know of some irresistibility potion or whatever it is.
Ah, naturally, Musk of Infinite Allure, an age-old recipe, maybe even older, tested by Moses himself.
Moses?
Or how do you think he managed to get his people to follow him through the desert for 40 years? It's extremely potent.
Yeah, so it would seem. How much do you want for it?
Who do you take me for? The wisdom of the ancients isn't something that's bought and sold in the marketplace. Did Jesus charge for his miracles? But since you ask...
What? That much? You're a crook.
As King Solomon said, honesty is for those who can afford it. If you like, I can mix the elixir for you in exchange for a small favor.
Oh, not again.
Now, is that any tone to use with your master? For shame.
Apologies, Master. I was carried away by my thirst for knowledge.
I understand your impatience, but the way to wisdom is narrow and arduous.
And leads out the window. So what is it you want from me now?
Ah, my dear apprentice, everything's gone to the devil. I'm living from hand to mouth, sleeping on straw, and the local peasants won't buy from me. They say they don't trust me, as if I was some kind of charlatan. Can you believe it? Does this look to you like the face of a swindler? I'm an honest trader in sacred goods, whose only concern is the welfare of troubled souls.
A regular good Samaritan.
And any time now the slanderous gossip will spread here from Sassau. I should leave before things get worse. But I can't go anywhere until I've made a bit of coin. So what's needed is to give the locals a bit of encouragement, to open their hearts and purses.
I'm not going to go around beating people for you.
What do you take me for? I wouldn't hurt a fly. Violence is for the dull-witted. We must gently demonstrate to them the necessity of buying my remedies. For example, to ward off a revenant.
Revenant? What revenant?
The dead return from the grave, a corpse that the soul is unable to depart from, which wanders among the living, filled with rage at its wretched fate.
Yeah, I saw something like that once. But it was just some drunk going home from the tavern after losing all his money at dice.
Don't make light of such things. Now tell me, do you know how to deal with a revenant?
Set fire to it and piss on it?
You're not taking this seriously at all, are you? You are my trained apprentice, but the ignorant villager is entirely at a loss how to deal with such dark forces. It is our sacred duty to prepare them for such threats.
And how do you propose to do that?
Well, they're all doubting Thomases. They need proof. We'll need a grave, an empty grave that we can use. There's one along the way to Sassau, but it's got one minor shortcoming. Well, it's not entirely empty.
Not entirely? What does that mean?
You have to dig it up first.
But that's a sin.
Refusing to help the needy is also a sin. I haven't had a decent meal for 40 days and 40 nights.
My conscience is clear where your stomach is concerned. Disturbing a grave is a grave sin.
The grave is not in hallowed ground, so that's hardly worth one Lord's Prayer in penance. I asked a priest once, just out of curiosity. The locals don't like to talk about it, so it's surely got some sinister past behind it. And in places like that, revenants sprout up like mushrooms after rain.
Well, if that's how it is, we could open old wounds. That could easily set people against us. Again.
Then it would be best if no one could connect us to it, wouldn't it?
First you need to dig up the grave and spread the gossip.
And what about that empty grave? The one beyond the village, alongside the road to Sassau. Just by the river, on the Pine Headland. I saw it with my own 2 eyes.
Lord in heaven, what in the name of...
How come it's not in hallowed ground, anyway? Only unrepentant sinners are buried like that. Usually.
Well, once a long time ago there was a young charcoal burner living here with his wife. There was always a lot of charcoal burners here, but But this fellow worked alone. That's not an easy job for one man. He was a hard-headed fellow who always wanted to take care of his family himself.
Well, I can understand that. It's always better to work for yourself than break your back for someone else.
His wife was expecting, though no one knew it yet. And he wasn't doing well at all. Soon enough, they had nothing to eat. And so he took to thieving.
Well, I can understand him. To watch your family suffer like that. What could he do when they were going hungry?
If we'd known how badly off they was, folk would have helped out. But he kept his troubles to himself. Well, at first it was just a few eggs going missing from people's hen coops. But then it was anything that wasn't nailed down. And in the end, they caught him.
And I suppose he was harshly punished for it.
Even then he didn't let on why he was doing it. They whipped the skin off his back and banished him from Leditchcott.
So justice was done then?
It wasn't enough for some folk. When the butcher found out he'd never get any compensation, he wanted them to chop off the charcoal burner's hands. If the bailiff hadn't talked sense into him, he'd have done it himself with his cleaver.
Well, he got off lightly enough then.
And in the end, he got what was coming to him, and more. His wife bled to death in childbirth, and the child died with her.
Nothing could have been done to save them.
There was no one there. He had no one who would care for his wife. They say on that day, he parted ways with God forever, and he turned his back on the village too. I reckon he never forgave himself, nor us either.
The Lord moves in mysterious ways. But how did he end up?
Don't ask me that, lad. I beg you.
Come now, good wife. You can't leave the story unfinished.
I said no. Will you let it lie?
I know who was buried in that grave. A young charcoal burner.
So begins the tragic tale of the young charcoal burner who became entangled with the devil himself.
Oh, don't start. What devil? I'm trying to tell you. Ugh. He was from Ledetchko. He was trying to eke out a living for himself and his wife, but he couldn't manage. When she fell pregnant, he took to stealing.
Pride drove him from the straight and narrow path, and soon he sold his soul to the devil to fill his stomach.
They caught him and punished him, but some of the people he'd robbed didn't think it was enough. Then when his wife died in childbirth, and the child too, he blamed everyone for it. Even God, apparently.
But when the time came to pay his debt to hell, the devil had no use for his soul, and took his wife and child instead. The charcoal burner cursed God, who struck him down in righteous vengeance. But the dead man's soul never left his body. He came back as a revenant to vent his rage at God and men and take vengeance on the living.
Jesus, did you listen to what I said at all?
Sorry, did you say something?
Oh, never mind. What do you want me to do with it?
The question is, what would the Revenant do to get revenge on the villagers? Well, apprentice?
He was stealing food from people, right? So, supposing he started again?
We should steal from people? Disgraceful. Have you no shame?
Maybe just a few eggs from hen coops, like the gossip mentioned.
Well, that wouldn't be too serious a sin. Will they put it down to the Revenant, though?
They would, if I put some charcoal there instead.
And their nourishment he turned into ash.
The gossip mentioned the butcher. It seems he was infuriated that the charcoal burner's punishment was too lenient.
And the Revenant spoiled their meat with his malign touch.
How's that?
Spoiled meat is a classic example of a Revenant's power.
I thought it was the work of bad butchers.
That too, sometimes.
So, I should switch the good meat for bad at the butcher's. What about the butcher woman?
What about her?
Her conscience was troubled on account of her man, and she couldn't sleep. But I helped her, so she's found some peace.
So, no problem then.
What? I'm supposed to scare the wits out of her and start all over again?
All right, if you can find some other solution, you don't have to switch the meat. But I wouldn't worry about her. But make sure it's the same kind of meat. Not even a revenant will turn a cow into a chicken.
What about his wife and child? No doubt he'd want to avenge their death.
Well, how did they die?
In childbirth.
And when his love turned to rage, the water turned to blood. Nothing too original, but it's tried and tested. If you do it at the baths, everyone will hear of it.
How am I supposed to do that? It might be a bit suspicious if I'm seen walking around with a pail of blood.
No problem. There's a certain potion that will do the trick easily.
He cursed God. That's very serious.
What is it that most brings God to mind?
They don't have a church there. But everyone will have a rosary. I can't think of anything else.
That's it! If folks start losing their rosaries, they'll have sleepless nights over it.
You want me to steal rosaries? But that's...
Or just exchange them.
For what?
For nothing.
Great.
So, switch eggs for charcoal, switch the meat, color the water in the baths, and switch the rosaries. That ought to do it.
Beyond what the charlatan tells you, there's two additional things you can do on your own. The first is to speak to the bailiff about the vagrants.
You look a bit worried, bailiff.
How can I not be? What with the whole village complaining about ghosts?
Ghosts?
An empty grave that they say a revenant crawled out of. They talk of nothing else.
You don't think there's any truth to it?
No, it's nothing but old wives' tales.
But how come the grave is empty?
You don't need any magic to dig up a grave. A spade will do.
But why would anyone do that? Surely no God-fearing Christian would dig up the grave of some poor soul who hasn't even got the piece of hallowed ground to rest in.
A God-fearing Christian? No.
So you suspect someone?
Could be. There's been a band of good-for-nothing itinerants hanging around recently. They weren't making any trouble, though, so I let them be. But this is going too far.
How do you know it was them?
Who else would it be?
What about the Revenant?
Oh, don't you start. That Revenant of yours is nothing but idle hands doing the devil's work. I'd send them packing myself if I had the time and the men.
A hero is what you need for a job like that. If you could find one.
From what I hear, you could be just the man for the job.
Maybe I could help you out with them.
You look like you know how to handle yourself.
But that doesn't mean I have to solve everything with brute force. I'd rather parley.
That's how I like things. Peaceful and orderly. I don't need any bloodshed around here. I've trouble enough with one long-dead corpse. Send them packing and there'll be peace again.
Don't worry, Master Bailiff. I'll be the very soul of discretion.
Then I'll gladly accept your help. Is there anything you need to know?
Who are these people?
Just some itinerants who'd rather roam the roads than do an honest day's work. They're not cutthroats, though, just petty thieves and beggars.
What are they doing here?
Damned if I know, or where they came from. Except for one fella who's from Ledechko. But the rest are from God knows where. Last I heard, they were a bit away from the village, across the river by the old mine.
You can convince them to leave, but you can also turn them to your side.
Someone hereabouts dug up a grave, and the bailiff reckons you lot are mixed up in it.
Sure, might as well blame us for everything. Why not? I suppose we burned down skullets too.
Don't play the innocent lamb with me. You know what I think?
No, and I don't much care.
Well, maybe you ought to.
Oh yeah? Why?
Because I can offer you a job.
Doing what? Don't expect us to break our backs for a few groschen.
Perish the thought. No, it's something more suited to your, talents. I need someone to frighten people a little.
Frighten who?
The Ledechko villagers.
What's going on now?
Them lot are already shitting themselves on account of that revenant.
Aye, but not quite enough to suit me.
And how do you want us to do it?
A bit of fire would be good, since the dead man was a charcoal burner. Some flames flickering in the night, that would scare them.
Aye, all the more so since the fellow was accused of arson.
How do you know that?
One of us is from Ledechko. He was only a youngster when it all happened, but he remembers the fires all right.
I see. Well, that should scare them out of their wits then.
You bet it will. So what's in it for us?
I'll put in a good word for you with the bailiff, and he'll leave you be.
What would you tell him?
Well, I could tell him I saw someone else near the grave. Humans, maybe?
Well, that would help, I suppose. All right, deal.
Just make sure no one sees you.
Don't worry. They always turn us a blind eye anyway.
I talked to those itinerants, and I'm sure they're not mixed up in it.
How can you be so sure?
Well, those lazy beggars. Digging up a grave is too much like work for them.
You could be right. Well, that hasn't helped much then. I still have an empty grave and no explanation for it.
The others use some rotten eggs thrown away by the trader.
I hope you're not after eggs.
Eggs? Why?
Because they've almost all gone off. Can you imagine the stink?
I don't think I want to.
Terrible it is.
Uh-huh.
Enough to make you retch.
I see.
A diabolical stink. Like you've got a dose of the...
All right, I get the picture.
Aren't you a bit oversensitive?
Exchanging eggs for charcoal and stealing the rosaries is quite straightforward, but the bloody water requires Henry to make sense of a ditty.
How love turned to bloodshed. Once there was a knight who, though upright and noble-looking, had a prickly, unapproachable appearance. He fell in love with a fragile young maid, whom he saw with her sisters in a field, all wearing bright red wimples. But he was afraid his prickly exterior would frighten her. So he asked the advice of another knight, a pious and learned crusader, who carried the name of the patron saint of his order with pride. The pious knight told him he would arrange a rendezvous with the maid. All three would drink wine together by the river, and he would help his friend to get acquainted with her. This they did, but the maid fell in love instead with the pious knight. The stern knight was enraged and challenged his rival to a duel. The two fought long and fiercely, but they were equally matched. And so, in the end, they both fell mortally wounded, anguished at the tragedy her beauty had caused. The young maid took a dagger from one of the knights and plunged it into her own heart. Their bodies lay together on the ground, and the blood flowed from them into the river, turning the waters crimson.
I thought you were going to tell me the recipe, not some fable.
It is the recipe. I mean, the recipe is concealed in the story.
What on earth for?
So I don't forget it.
All right. So what does it mean?
I can't remember.
Great. So if you don't know, who does?
You'll figure it out, my loyal apprentice. I remember there are 3 plants in the story, but that's about all. But I know it was a simple recipe. It should be enough to grind the ingredients and brew them together for one turn. So, all you have to do is work out what the ingredients are from the story.
Sure. Why make things simple if you can complicate them?
After taking a few measures, the villagers are suitably scared, except for one person, fearless Felix.
Good work, Henry. The whole village is shaking in its boots. Soon people won't step outside the door without saying 3 Hail Marys. Some folk saw flames of hellfire flickering around the village at night. Great! No one in Ledechko would eat a single egg, even if they had any, because all the hens are hexed. The baths are closed. No one will tell you why, but everyone is clearly frightened. Half the village is without rosaries. Someone even wanted to buy one from me.
And did you sell it?
I don't trade in such banal goods. But I sold him a cat's paw.
I didn't know a cat's paw was good for warding off revenants.
Henry, all the goods I have are good for warding off revenants.
So, the job is done, eh?
Not quite.
But you just said the whole village is shaking with fear.
The whole village, but for one individual.
Well, surely that doesn't matter.
That's what I thought too. Only this fellow is giving everyone the benefit of his wisdom. He needs shaking up before he undoes your good work.
But if he's not been scared yet, what more can I do to frighten him?
Well, when he's not hanging around here ruining my trade, he's in the tavern boasting that he'd happily sleep by that empty grave to prove there's no revenant.
Yeah, I bet he would.
Exactly. He just needs a little persuasion. And once he's there, make it the most terrifying night of his life.
Well, what are we waiting for then?
It's best to be well prepared. You ought to find out something about him.
We can speak to the gossip to find out what scares his friends. One is afraid of fire, and another one is afraid of animals.
You're still here, lad? I thought you'd have fled by now.
Fled? Why on earth would I do that?
Because there's a revenant on the prowl. The whole village is talking about it, and everyone is terrified.
Ah, that. But I heard there's one brave lad who's not afraid.
You mean Felix?
Well, I don't know what his name is, but he's always arguing in the tavern that there's no revenant.
That's him. The fool doesn't believe what's going on under his own nose. He hasn't the sense he was born with.
He even said he'd spend the night at the graveside, just to prove there's no revenant.
Aye, all talk and no action.
Is he brave or just stupid? Surely he's afraid of something.
I couldn't tell you. But if he's to be believed, he doesn't fear the devil himself.
And do you believe him?
Well, it's true he never seems bothered by anything. But then he's always with that other pair.
What pair?
2 mates of his.
But he was alone in the tavern.
Aye, they're not locals, but outside the village, wherever he goes, they go with him. They're not bad lads, but they're no heroes, that's for sure.
How's that?
Them 2 have their fears, but then who doesn't? The first one wouldn't even go into the woods alone because he's afraid of wild animals. He got lost in the forest as a young lad, and he wasn't found till next morning. Shaking and pale as a ghost he was when they found him.
Poor lad. Must have been scared out of his wits.
That he was.
What about the other one?
He's afraid of fire. His own father burned him, God forgive him. As a young lad, he was playing with fire and nearly set fire to the house. So his pa taught him a lesson he wouldn't forget.
Poor lad. That's a terrible way to teach a child.
My words, exactly.
This brave fella, Felix his name is, if we can get him to spend the night at the grave, he won't be alone. Wherever he goes, he always has 2 mates tagging along.
Like he's afraid to be alone. So, if we could get him there alone, it shouldn't be too hard to scare him. Only, we have to get rid of the other 2. What do you know about them?
One of them is afraid of wild animals. Won't even go into the woods on his own.
I see. And the other one?
Well, he's afraid of fire, but I doubt an ordinary campfire would do the trick.
Well, we'll think of something. Anyway, you take care of the first one.
How, though?
Haven't you learned anything from me? Talk to a dog.
Of course. Why didn't I think of that? Any particular one, Master?
The most frightening one, of course.
And how am I supposed to recognize him? One looks the same as another.
By his bark, naturally. Can't you hear him? He'd scare the wits out of anyone.
That's a dog.
Either that or Satan in the guise of a beast.
Learning how to make monstrous noises involves Henry going barking mad. You can kill the dog instead if you want, but that will close off that approach.
Come on then. Bark. What a beast you are. Alright, let's see. Ruff. Ruff. Again. Boo. 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 That's still not quite it. That's it. And now I'm officially the village idiot. Found that mutt. Although from the noises it made, you'd hardly guess it was a dog.
So you've learned to bark.
I have, Master.
So bark.
Bark? I'll give you bark.
Easy, easy. Down, boy.
But what if it's not enough?
Ah, ye of little faith. Besides, can you think of any other way?
If we want to have him there on his own, I could always knock the other two out.
And what if he finds them unconscious?
I can always haul them off somewhere he won't find them.
Just make sure you don't botch it, Henry. It could easily turn very sour.
Don't worry. But what about the other fella?
Ah, yes, apprentice. You have the good fortune to witness a genius at work. Watch and learn. An oil lamp.
An oil lamp?
Precisely. Isn't it ingenious?
A marvellous invention, I grant you. But what do you want to do with it?
That's the clever part. I've hung a lamp like this over the Revenant's grave. All you have to do is shoot it down. It'll fall on the grave and burst into flames.
Aye, I'll give it a go. And then what?
Then you just have to goad our Felix into putting his money where his mouth is.
But what if he doesn't fall for it?
Refusing would ruin his credibility. Go and see him. I'll bet you anything, if you present it right, he'll jump at it.
I've heard there's a revenant haunting these parts.
Ah, you don't want to believe those old wives' tales.
Well, it's not true then.
Of course not. It's just a lot of fairy tales.
Oh, I don't know. Aren't you afraid?
Ha! What's there to be afraid of?
Well, that's easy to say.
What are you trying to say?
Nothing. It's just that, well, bold talk doesn't prove anything.
Are you saying I'm lying?
Well, can you prove your claims?
What?
Well, supposing you spent the night at that grave, like you say. That'd prove there's no revenant, wouldn't it?
You reckon so? I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Besides, since you're so fearless, it'd be nothing to you, right?
Aye, that's right.
How about something to buck up your courage? Ah, probably not. You don't need it.
I don't, but it can't hurt. Thanks, Annie.
So when are you going to do it?
Just as soon as I can in the evening.
And now you can... Shh! Quiet, Henry. You'll give us away.
Sorry. What's that you're wearing?
What do you think it is?
I don't know, some new fashion?
It's my Revenant costume, of course.
My apologies, Master, for not recognising it immediately.
You obviously still have a lot to learn.
So did they come?
Yes, all three. They're camping at the top of the hill.
Right. I'll have time to get haunting then. Where do I start?
I'll leave that up to you. The main thing is to scare off the two cronies first. I'll take care of fearless Felix.
Frightening Felix involves getting rid of his friends. You need to shoot the lantern so that it falls into the Revenant's grave, and bark away the second friend.
No, please, God, no. I can't stand this. No, no, please, no. They're everywhere. They'll devour me. Jesus Christ, I've got to get away from here.
What are you?
I didn't do anything.
That was something.
How did you like that, eh?
Wonderful! I haven't had so much fun since I dressed up as the Pope.
Did you see him run? Like all the demons of hell were on their heels.
One was quite enough, evidently.
So what now?
Now I just wait for my customers to turn up. Come and see me tomorrow before noon.
Henry still has the bones of the charcoal burner in his pocket.
Well, what about the dead man's remains?
You still have them?
No, you said to keep them. What do I do with them now?
I'll buy them from you.
What on earth for?
The bones of a revenant. Those can be valuable goods. What do you say?
I think I'd rather bury them.
You could. But what a waste. Imagine the power they could have.
At least the poor wretch will have peace at last.
Maybe. As long as you bury him in hallowed ground. Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
Like in Rattay, maybe?
Well, that's probably the nearest. That gossip-mongering crone would know.
True, I could ask her.
Now, speaking of the gossip, it's possible to bury the heretic with his family instead of at the Rattay church.
You know, I can't stop thinking about what happened to that poor wretch.
Have you no consideration for a poor old woman? I told you I don't want to talk about it.
It might relieve you to talk to someone.
Relieve me from what?
Well, guilt.
Guilt? Why should I feel guilty?
Now, clearly something weighs heavy on your soul, just like the other villagers. The older ones. And I'd say it's connected to that empty grave. Well, that wretch returns as a revenant, and no one does anything. It's not just fear, but more like everyone is expecting some punishment that was bound to come one day.
Oh, you might be right. Maybe it would give me some peace in my old age to finally tell the whole story. Several people from the village went to have it out with Lev, but he grabbed an axe and drove them off. He swore if anyone came near him, he'd burn their house down. Then he buried his wife and child in the meadows beyond Electrical. I saw him carving 3 statues there.
Lev, you say his name was? Oh. What kind of statues?
There's 3 roughly carved beams there, each with a human face, except the smallest, which has no face at all.
For the stillborn child, I suppose. What happened then?
Nothing. He went back to his work, but never spoke to the villagers again. He'd even go all the way to Rattay for food, rather than talk to anyone here.
So he died alone in the end?
Actually, it was the villagers. It was us that killed him.
What? Just on account of his stealing?
No. Not long after, fires started springing up in the village. And when the first house burned down, the folk were very angry.
And of course suspicion fell on Lev.
Everyone was dead certain it was him. They all remembered his words. Do you know how arsonists are punished, lad?
No, I don't.
by burning on the pyre. But no one wanted to waste time with the law. We just went to his house at night, smashed in the door and windows, and threw lighting torches inside. And that was the end of him. But the fires didn't stop.
So he was innocent?
He was.
Well, I won't condemn you for it. It's for God to judge, but may he forgive you for it.
Thanks, lad. I pray every day for forgiveness, and it's a weight off my shoulders to tell someone.
Rest in peace.
It was a sad tale, but at least he was with his family now, and hopefully he found peace at the end of it all. Henry doesn't have to do all the activities to scare the villagers, but when it comes to the meat, it's an opportunity that he can't pass up to give the butcher his comeuppance for selling him satanic cattle.
Oh my god, the mutton is stinking. What a waste. But how is it possible? I butchered it only yesterday. Oh Christ, I can't believe this.
It'll take some time for the feed to work its way through the village. In the meantime, Henry can take the opportunity to procure the last of the supplies for new Privislavits. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified when new videos come out. See you soon.